Okay, and there we are. It is time. We will go ahead and kick things off. Welcome back for those people who follow my stream a little bit. I apologize for the long break. I was on vacation down in Puerto Rico, a little bit for business and then a little bit for just a relaxing time with my wife. So it feels good to be back and good to be coding. First of all, thank you very much. I noticed there was quite a few people who jumped in answering questions on the Gitter chat room, as well as on issues and pull requests, and I really appreciate all the help. So for all of you guys who jumped in and were answering people's questions, thank you, thank you, thank you. A couple updates on where things are at and where things are going. I'm hoping to try and get in a bunch of changes into this library for the 3.0 release. There are going to be some breaking changes that come through with it, and I'm also wanting to try and release, hopefully, roughly at the same time frame as .NET Core 3.0 releases at the same time. The fact that this release is going to be our version 3.0 is strictly coincidence, no relationship whatsoever. It just happened to line up that way. Um, but the big thing that's going to make this a little bit more challenging is the Ma app support because of the breaking changes that are coming in Ma apps 2.0. And then trying to figure out how to marry that up with the .NET Core 3 support. So what may end up happening is this material design in Xaml may release initially version 3.0 with the MAApps support library not updating to support .NET Core until MAApps 2.0 goes, or maybe there'll just be a preview release of it. I haven't quite figured out kind of how to marry those things up. But the short version is the MAApps support library. I can target both. The problem is there's breaking changes. So to release support for both the old Ma apps and the new Ma, so old Ma apps being 165 and the new 2.0 stuff, would require making a bunch of changes inside of the library with a bunch of if-defs, and I'm not sure I want to bite that off for something that would effectively be obsolete, hopefully in the not too distant future. So for those people who are working with my apps, just be aware of that, that if you want to update to .NET Core, there's probably going to be a little bit of lag time before all of the libraries support that stuff. So it is worth noting, let me switch over here real quick, and I will drop this link in the chat for anybody who wants it. This is the roadmap for .NET Core. And so it is worth noting that GA is currently scheduled for September 2019. So that is this month, given that this is September 2nd, all day, at least September 2nd, where I am at. So just be aware that this likely means that I'm going to be looking to try and get this 3.0 release out in the next several weeks, and with full knowledge that there may be breaking changes. I usually hate to push releases quickly. I'd much rather let things simmer and deal with potential bugs. But I do want to try and time this so that when .NET Core 3 releases, that those of you who want to use the new .NET Core stuff, that it is available and ready to go for you. So there is all of that there. One other announcement. As of yesterday, I was awarded the Microsoft MVP Award. So yay, made for a very great start to my week. So makes me a little bit excited for getting through all of this. Let's see, there was one other thing on my list. Let's see. .NET Core, release, MVP. Don't remember. Must not have been that important. So we're going to blaze right ahead. So my plan tonight, unless people have questions, comments, things that they want to see, is I'm going to just start blazing through all of the stuff that I've dropped into the 3.0 milestone. Again, for those people who aren't familiar with the library, you will see me put issues and pull requests into a milestone. Don't assume that that means that those features or issues are going to be addressed necessarily in that milestone until you see them get closed. A lot of times I will put them into a milestone And that's only me committing to giving them a thorough look before that milestone goes out the door. So there's a very real chance that things that go in here get yanked out before the release, but it does mean that if they get put into the milestone, that I am going to at least look through them and make a decision as far as what's going to go in and what's going out. A lot of times I'll throw things in, especially for pull requests, that look like they'll probably be pretty easy merges and that kind of thing. So just be aware if you see these types of things go in, don't make too many big assumptions. There is one issue here, 1301, that I think is worth people being aware of. With 3.0, because it is a major rev, it affords me the opportunity of making breaking changes. This means things like default values and various other things that would cause your code to break and not necessarily be a clean upgrade. I do try to make sure that if it's a minor or just a bug fix rev, that these don't cause breaking changes to your apps. I know that hasn't always been perfect, but I do try my best to make sure that I don't knowingly send something out the door with breaking changes in it. Major revision changes, you should always assume that there's probably breaking changes in there because this is the opportunity that I have to actually go through and change stuff. So be aware that there are things coming, and there's starting to become a list here. So if there are breaking changes or minor feature requests like this that people are interested in seeing come through, please comment on here. These types of things are effectively what are going to build up the release notes for 3.0, and I plan on doing at least a live stream, maybe a blog post on updating your app to 3.0 and what sort of changes you need to look for in your app and how to go through and fix those. So be aware. I'll drop the link in chat again, or in chat for anybody who wants it, but it is issue 1301 is the big one to be aware of here tonight. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to show. So previous stream we had looked at, and let me go find it real quick. We had looked at an app that I had started playing with called Simply Budget, which is at present is just a very simple MVVM WPF application, obviously using Material Design and Xaml. But we started looking at AppCenter and tying this app in and what it was going to take advantage of some of the new features that were available there. So let me bring this guy over. And at the end of this stream, or at least as part of that, when we gave up on this, we weren't able to actually get the AppCenter SDK working. So I had filed a bug on the AppCenter SDK repo, and one of the developers got back. It turns out that at least in its current state, there is a kind of an unfortunate dependency chain issue. And so if you want to go through and play with AppCenter with WPF, you do need to explicitly set some of the package dependencies, specifically the SQLite one. You can see the correct versions that you need inside of this package's config. So if you try to download it and you just use the Visual Studio NuGet settings for either latest or is it earliest or latest? I'm blanking on the exact terms for it. You'll end up with the wrong dependencies. So both getting the latest stuff and the latest, or the minimum versions and the latest versions, both of those will end you up in the wrong state, which is unfortunate. So there are some SQLite libraries in here that you need to make sure that you get set up correctly. So these are all of the magical version numbers that you need to get lined up with. And real quick, I will just log into AppCenter real fast. So for those people interested, here's the link to that packages config buried inside of that repo. And let me get the AppCenter pulled up because I can show at least how that stuff is supposed to look. Because before we never got a chance to take a look at what the diagnostic stuff looks like, which was really unfortunate. And so give me a second to just get it open. Okay, so here's the AppCenter page for it. I'm avoiding scrolling down because I know my GUID is right there. But if we take a look at the analytics, for those people unfamiliar, We left the app basically in a state where when we click the button, we could force a crash. So we'll zoom this guy in a little bit. So you can see when this thing goes through and fires up, and obviously this is a little old because I resolved it, or I got this working just prior to taking off on vacation, but was able to get in some sessions per user. You can see my device name is I think just an auto-generated one because I don't think I've changed it. So you do get some basic user counts, some information about the devices, some information about the languages that are being used. And if we come over here, I don't think we have events. We should have some diagnostic information. So from over here, this is basically where we had wired it in. You'll notice that this goes through. AppCenter is fairly intelligent about making sure that it groups similar bugs together so that you don't end up having to dig through a huge list of effectively the same crashes or error logs. But you can dive in, and this is for people who have used AppCenter for the mobile side. This is very similar to what you get on like a Xamarin app. But you get a reasonable stack trace going through here. Because this was being done in debug mode with symbols available, it's able to give me exact line numbers of where things were. If you look up this line in the source code, you'll see that it ultimately is just thrown to exception, which is what this guy is here. But then we could go through, and again, we can keep track of how many users. So 100% of the users that it's seen use the app have experienced this crash because there's one. Most affected devices, most affected operating systems. So if you've got an issue that only reproduces in, say, Windows 7, Windows 10, you can get an idea of the exact versions here of where those things came in, and then obviously this one's here. So again, if anybody's interested, check out my YouTube channel. I do keep a log of all my old videos there since Twitch doesn't archive them forever. So those are available as well for those people interested. You can find the YouTube channel there. Okay, so short version summary, AppCenter is great and awesome. I look forward to the WPF side getting built out a little bit more. Would love to go through, I think maybe on a future stream if people are interested. Leave me a note in the comments. It would be cool to set this up with a CI system in DevOps and have it push distributions app. I think everything's there to make that work. Haven't tried it yet. But I would love, if people are interested, we can walk through building this out and getting it set up to distribute that way. Might also be cool to use this app as an example app for an upgrade to .NET Core. Was also considering potentially using this as sort of a gateway into doing some more Azure stuff, whether it be the build and release pipelines, or even connecting it up to something like maybe a Cosmos DB or something so we can share the data across. So if that's something people are interested in seeing, let me know, either in like the Gitter chat on the material design library, or you can just comment on this video, either Twitch or YouTube, doesn't make a difference to me, and let me know what you're interested in seeing, because I'm always looking for ideas of what would be interesting for people. So with that said, I think for the rest of the evening, my plan right now is to walk through the 3.0 milestone and see about getting probably a bunch of these pull requests merged in. There's been quite a few pull requests submitted, and I wanted to review some of those and see about getting those guys brought into the library. Because it looked like there was, and I just want to check the pull request list too, because I think there's some that have come in that I haven't had a chance to check with. So these ones here, so I do tend to prioritize fixes for either bugs, crashes, or regressions. Those tend to be my highest thing, and this is definitely one that got introduced in the most recent version. Basically, argument null exception when double clicked on the grayed out grid to dismiss the dialog. So the short version is on a quick double click on the dialog, it was possible to cause the no reference exception because the current session was null. So this is effectively, you're able to get two calls into here because the grid animates out and is able to get that current session all the way in. So I think this is fine, but I want to check it in a couple places. So let's go through and start here. So 1377. So good old get cracking. I have way too many things open. So let's just collapse some of this stuff. 1377. Let's go here. Sure. Sounds great. Let's see. We'll just name it with the pull request number. Create branch. And away we go. So get cracking makes the checking out people's pull requests very easy for those people who might be using Git on the command line or similar. Basically, all this does is add a remote to my repository for whoever submitted the pull request, and then checks out their branch locally. So, and in this case, because the remote branch was master, I already have a local master, it makes me rename it. So let's flip back over here to Visual Studio. Hopefully it doesn't think too hard. I don't know how many changes there are going to be. So let's jump over here and look at Dialog Host, because this guy is a pretty simple one in here. And I am wondering if it might be possible to unit test this. The really hard part with some of these unit tests is especially effectively faking out mouse interactions, because theme libraries like this are sort of by definition very UI heavy. Let's see, what was the line number change on this? Too much stuff. Too much stuff open. Let's close out some of these windows so I don't get lost on where I'm going. Okay, so line number 641. Way down here. Ooh, that's cool. Pressing the wrong button and changing my mouse sensitivity. Okay, 641. So this one goes here, and ultimately, so the error occurs here when it calls into dialog closing event args, and it goes through to pass in the session. Session was null, throws an argument null exception. That was ultimately the problem. So I think we're going to fix a couple things. Clean up the trailing white space. I do tend to run with white space enabled. For better or worse, I like it. I like to see white space shown so that I can clean it up when I do it. We're just going to do a little C#7 magical refactor, and while I'm in here, enter action, fix some spelling, everyone's happy. What are you wanting about to statement body? Why would I want that to go to statement body? No. So, and I'm noticing this obsolete attribute here. I'm going to add this real quick to, let's see here, milestones. I'm going to put that on the 1301 because I don't know if that is on there already. I think this guy got added with all or I think I went through and added it. Remove obsolete. It is not there, so let's just add that guy in real quick. Let's see. Remove obsolete. Let's grab that real quick. So dialog closing event args. And it is the content. So, perfect. Take care of that. Okay, so this is ultimately what's throwing. Let's interesting that this... Really, are all of these unused? That is surprising to me. Interesting. Interesting. I'm going to add that to the list too. We just keep finding stuff. So, let's see. Remove unused dialog closing event args instructors. We'll spell it out rather than abbreviating everything. Okay, there's those guys. Okay, so what I'm thinking actually should happen is I'm wondering if that check for null should be pushed into this method instead of being done up above. So let's let this go Resharper. Find me all my usages. Because I'm thinking that if we move it down to where it's actually going to cause a problem, that might be better. So passes parameter, this is on the dialog session object itself. Let's see here, because this is the dialog session. So there's sort of an inherent catch-22 here in that a dialog host really can only have a single session going at a time, and so there's this close kind of is interesting to me because I would expect it to actually pass through the session. That's clearly not true. And in most cases, it's probably being set correctly. Just, it does make me a little weirded out. If no dialog is open, current session will return null because, so this was a convenience property that was put in because before the only way to get access to the session was through the opened or closed callback handlers, which got a little awkward since in a lot of cases you already had access to the dialog host itself. So I think, especially since the close, where am I going? That one. You just stay open for a minute. Because this guy is internal, so he shouldn't be exposed directly. That's just a usage of checking it. Close dialog. So this is a can't execute delegate for the routed event. This is the one that was problematic because this was the fix that was put in. And then this guy here. Show me. There's several in here. Maybe it's okay where it's at for now. Just trying to see. There's a fine balance between doing a major refactor and just fixing the bug, and it might be good enough to just fix the bug. Okay, so let's keep that for the moment. The question I still have is, can I simulate this? Because I need to simulate on mouse up while we're in here. Add a little pattern matching goodness to the code. For those people who question why we need Visual Studio 2019, this is why. This library will always be using the latest developer tools, which means if you want to compile it from source, you will need latest versions of Visual Studio, which for now is Visual Studio 2019, just to take advantage of the latest C# compiler features. Now, that doesn't mean that you need VS 2019 for your WPF app. It's perfectly fine. This library is going to continue supporting older versions of .NET Framework and .NET Core, at least as long as they are being supported by Microsoft. And so you can still use the library in older versions, but if you want to compile from source, you will need latest version of Visual Studio, .NET Framework SDK, and .NET Core SDKs, because we do multi-target for both of those. The .NET Core restriction was a recent one. So I would like to jump over, and the one thing I would like to do is see about putting a unit test on this, if possible. I don't know how easy this is going to be to do, but we're going to try, because until I try, I don't know the answer. So let's see, STA fact, so that our unit tests run within a single-threaded apartment, which is typically needed for most UI interactions. Issue, I always try to link these guys together, so switch over here. This should have a, let's see, 1328. So public async task when double click away, dialog closes, or something to that effect. Okay, and then let's see here. How are we getting this guy setting me up a dialog host? I just don't remember how I set up these unit tests. So it's creating a new dialog host, raising the event. I don't see anything that would be. Is this guy applying the template? Doesn't look like it. Why is this not doing dialog host apply default style? This is a helpful extension method that I've written for anybody who dives in here to do unit tests. It basically goes looking for the style out of the defaults, not XAML, and then applies it, thus applying the template, and manually calls apply template. Basically trying to simulate what WPF would do to build up the control correctly, just so that it looks and works appropriately. This guy should, so that should get me to there, and this should get me to the onApply template. So onApply template, and basically this guy here is what we're looking for, this content cover grid, because this is the grayed out area that's being double clicked on. So this guy here, content cover grid name. So let's go back to our unit test down here. I think we can just do, let's see, dialog host. Yeah, I understand. JetBrains is slowing down performance. I get it. Go away. Find visual child, I believe, is the magical incantation. Let's see, it will be a grid, and find visual child takes in a name, so dialog host, and then content cover grid name. Grid content cover. That gets us to there. And now the question is, how do I simulate, because what event were we listening for? Mouse up something or another. So something on left mouse button up on, I'm missing it, on left mouse button down, on dialog closing, on apply template. Well, we can find it from on apply template. Oh, content cover. On mouse left button up. So I think we can do raise event. I think. I don't know this for a fact because I don't think this is a routed event. So we will see. Let's see. Framework element. Left button, mouse left button up event. Routing strategy. Bubbling. So hold on. What do you really need all of these? I think I can get away with just the routed event name, but I don't know that for a fact. Oh, and that is internal. Oh, routed event args. And let's see, routed event object source. So I think we can get away with this. Use base class qualifier. Great, it's on UI element. So I think that gets me there. And I believe this gets me here. And just to verify that I can reproduce the bug, I am going to comment out the fix to begin with. And we'll just make sure we go red and then green on our unit test. Come on, I know. I know, you're unhappy with me. I get it. I get it. Okay. And we should probably actually show a dialog here somewhere. Let's see. Don't want to do that. Let's see. Insert throws. Not what I'm looking for. Should have a show content. I feel like one of you guys should be able to do what I'm looking for. Raise event, loaded. Yeah, something like, oh, I got you. This is just testing the showing and hiding of dialogues. Dialog Host exposes session as property. Great. So it looks like we always go through the show method here. Interesting. I thought, does this, maybe I'm missing my own API. I thought this guy here, the dialog itself exposed, and I could go directly, yeah, because I can just go straight to it. Let's not beat around the bush. No point in being indirect. So let's do this. Dialog host dot show dialog, and content will be just put a string in, and let's see here. Task shown dialog. So we don't actually need to await this guy. In fact, we don't want to, because we want this guy to come up, and then we want to do both of these events on the side, and this should trigger it. I'm trying to think what my assertion should be on this test, because assert doesn't throw exception is kind of ugly, but I think maybe an assertion that it just calls the close event once is probably, is probably the best assertion I can make. So let's see, dialog host, close. Come on. There's no event for closing? That doesn't seem right. Dialog host should have events. I guess the show method is what's expected to have those cleanup calls. We should probably fix that. If somebody wants to add routed events to the dialog host for when the dialog is opened and closed, that would be great. Or at least if somebody wants to open issues for that, that would be wonderful. So that means down here, in order to get that close callback, I need this. Let's see, new dialog closing event handler. And sure, lambda expression sounds great. Sender args, wonderful. Let's just do something like int closing count. Closing count. So we'll just count how many times our delegate gets called back, raise event args, and then assert. Let's see, r equal, no, this is xunit, not mstest. Assert equal, we expect, no, not 2, 1 on our closing count. Something like that. Should I be doing something with this task? I think we want to await it just to make sure that it actually finishes appropriately. It means that if this doesn't actually end up closing the dialog, this test will ultimately end up hanging forever. But I would rather that, because that at least gives us the information as far as whether this test passes or fails. XUnit ultimately has, or maybe I'm getting confused with XUnit too. At least in some units of XUnit, there's default timeouts. I think it's actually fairly long, like 10 minutes. So if this does end up hanging everywhere, it'll at least notify us. Okay, that is not where I want these windows to go. You, dock in the middle, please. Thanks. Thank you. Okay, Resharper, you are getting to be very slow while streaming. Come on, compile. I know, I've changed everything. You got to restore all your dependencies, specifically all the ones for .NET Core. Which ones are you missing over here? You should be fine. Yeah. I'm guessing this little yellow triangle is a UI glitch, because all of the things underneath it show as just fine, which they should be. So, great. Let's see. What are we doing? I see you're doing a background task. That's wonderful. Show me what you're doing. Still compiling. There you go. And RhinoMox. At some point I may go through and yank these unit tests out for the mocking libraries. There was a bunch of tests initially written, and for a long time the only unit tests in this library were around making sure that the palette helper was able to be mocked, which ultimately was just asserting that each of the members were virtual. And that, unfortunately, is not a great set of unit tests. So I've been slowly trying to go through and add these. I haven't really put a hard requirement on people submitting pull requests that there has to be unit tests. I'd love it if it is possible to add a unit test to the work that you do. please do so. And again, if this unit test isn't actually possible to be written, I don't know if this will actually trigger that event. But if it does, that would be great. And I don't mind going through and double checking unit tests and adding them in. I'm fully aware that there's large parts of this library that aren't really unit testable because there's so much having to do with the theme. I've been kind of poking at in my spare time for what little there is of different ways of doing unit testing over GUI libraries just to see what might be possible. I really don't like the idea of just like screenshotting and verifying that screenshots match from version 1 to version 2 because that ultimately means that I'm just pinning functionality. And there's not a lot of cases where just doing those screenshots would actually catch the unit test. The fact that this is still spinning makes me suspect that this is not quite going to give me what I want. So let's back up here real quick and let's go back and just verify that we aren't hitting our case. Let's see here. Content overlay, mouse left button up. Yeah, I suspect this guy is just stop, kill. Okay, so we're going to try this one more time with debugging just to make sure that we actually get to the parts that we expect to. So breakpoint on the on mouse up on the overlay, and then on apply template we want to look at as well, just to make sure that we are in fact loading the appropriate template and getting that grid in, because if the grid's not found, then it won't register the mouse up handler and there will be nothing listening for that. So there is a chance for hitting that, but I'd be a little more surprised if that was the failure. Only because the method for applying that default style has been in and working for a while on several other controls. So I believe it's working. I don't know that for a fact. I just think so. We'll let this guy go real quick, and hopefully, I suppose we could probably put a breakpoint right in our unit test as well, just to make sure this guy is finding it. Though if he wasn't, I would expect this to throw a no ref, because I assume we ended up sitting on this await forever. Okay, go find it. Go find it, guys. Apparently in debug mode, I do not have my unit test window being shown. It's a little obnoxious. Resharper. Let's see, unit tests, I think. Unit test sessions. I think that's the right window. I think. Yeah, there it is. It's just not where I had it. That is one thing that's both a blessing and a curse in Visual Studio. Sometimes I wish the window layouts I could just keep the same between the writing and the debugging states, and then other times it is nice having two separate ones. So are we not? Oh, there we go. There we go. Now we're making progress. Just running slow. Okay. Did we find a content cover? Yes, we did. It found the grid. Great. That's what we expected. So we'll just confirm. Registers event handler. Wonderful. Go ahead and go. So first potential failure point, not there. So we'll step over this guy. I assume content grid is found. Great. So this guy here is going to show the dialog. Just verify that we get over that, which we do. And I assume when I do step over this, Dialog Host tests, dispose gets called. That is interesting. Can mouse button event args. Oh. Oh. Look at that. Okay. That is better. So let's do this. No, definitely not that. Definitely not that. I just wanted. Oh, let's see. Mouse button event args. Please do not be an internal constructor. Please do not be an internal constructor. That's all I'm asking. Something in the back of my mind is telling me that this guy, that's something about this. I think I've run into this before on another project, and I'm not 100% confident, but I vaguely recall. No, you are public constructor. Cool. Interesting. I don't quite know. Let's see. Timestamp. The time when the input occurred. Okay. I'm guessing this must be used for detecting double clicks. I would expect. Well, that seems like an interesting or an easy enough constructor to do. So, mouse, or what is it? I think it's just mouse, and then you have access to the primary device, i.e. the mouse that's plugged in. We'll do date, time, points for spelling, datetime.now, and I assume that has to be like ticks, right? It wants an int. Not entirely sure what to do with that. Tell you what, we're gonna just try 1 and see what happens. Let's see, and mouse button left, but I'm curious, I want to have it be stylus device. How do I simulate something? Is there properties on here? Something has to indicate that it's mouse up rather than mouse down. Let's see here. Mouse button event args, handled input device, source, routed event. This is probably where we do it. I bet you it's routed event. Let's see. We decided it was UI element, mouse left button up event. I think something more akin to this. Not sure why my unit test just hung last time. But we at least now know where to catch it. So we're going to start it here, because we know that we got at least that far. We'll see what happens. I am unfortunately realizing that I did not bring any Mountain Dew into my office with me. So we might have to take a 30-second break while I run and go and grab one. So my mouth is quickly getting dry, and I definitely need my sweet nectar of life in order to keep coding. I find that most developers do seem to have an addiction to some form of caffeine, whether it be tea, coffee, energy drinks, pop. Seems that most developers I run into seem to have some form of it. Maybe it's just a skewed perspective. That's very possible. Okay, come on. Come on, this shouldn't be a full recompile, should it? No, there we go. I understand needing to recompile the unit test, but some point I'm hoping to either get a second machine or a beefier desktop to do some of this development on, so that hopefully these slowdowns stop occurring. This poor little laptop is not used to this sort of workload. Come on, there you go. There you go. Go ahead and run. Go ahead and load that up, and let's see what we can do. The other thing, because I changed the constructor for this unit test class to apply the default style, that's technically a change to all of these dialog tests. So when we push these changes, I'll just let the CI system double check and make sure that that doesn't break any existing unit tests. I can actually probably run them locally too, just real quick, just to make sure that everything works as expected. There we go. So let's see what happens now. It finds everything. Okay. Close on, click away should be true, I would hope. Should probably explicitly set this to true in the unit test just to confirm. Close on, click away is defaulting to false. Well, that is not going to do what we want. But importantly enough, it does trigger the case that we're after. So go ahead and click that off now that we know that we can get to this point. Back here, and let's do Dialog Host. Close on, click away gets true. Because ultimately that's what we're looking to do. And one more time. And again, hopefully a quick recompile. Hopefully. I have been trying out the JetBrains build, and it seems to work pretty well. I assume it's the same one that is built into Writer. I've got a lot of coworkers that definitely like using Writer for their IDE. It's got a lot of perks. It does lack a lot of the debugging tools that you have built into Visual Studio, especially if you have professional or enterprise SKUs. But for a C# IDE that is really fast and has great debugging, it works really well. Visual Studio, the more add-ons you add into it and the extra features that you turn on can certainly slow it down. And I know for me, I have half a dozen or so extensions that are tied in, Resharper being the big one. But currently, Resharper static analysis is so good that the amount of time that I lose waiting for it to analyze is paid back multiple times over just in the bugs that it saves me from. So I'm willing to put up with it for that reason. It makes my development a little bit slower, but it saves me enough bugs that I don't pay that extra time later. Okay, so once again, we hit there. I understand. Step over, please. Okay, and then this should throw. There we go. And that should go. And this should replicate our bug. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Dialog closing event args, constructor, argument null exception, value can't be null, parameter name session. Perfect. That is the exact bug that we were looking to prove out. Let's jump back over to Dialog Host. We will put, nope, too many characters. Put the fix back in. And now, just run the unit tests. And this should go from red to green. Just as a general unit testing practice, it's always good to make sure that when you first write a unit test that it starts out as red and then reintroduce or introduce the change that makes it turn green. Otherwise, you can run into cases where you write a unit test and it starts as green and it gives you that false sense of security as though it's actually doing its job. But if you've never seen the unit test go red, you really don't have any assurances that the code that you changed is actually what fixed it. And you can end up with unit tests with just as many bugs. So by making sure that you go from red to green, it gives you some checks and balances. One, to guarantee the fitness of your own code, and then also the fitness of the unit test to make sure that it really is testing what you think that it's testing. So that's one of the primary arguments for doing test-driven development is making sure that you write the test first so that it's red because the code doesn't exist, and then going through and turning it green. So a lot of times on some of these pull requests where it's fixing a bug, I will go back and write a test and undo the fix just to make sure that the fix does in fact fix it. And then it helps us at least going forward to ensure that we don't end up with too many regressions. Great, look at that. Okay, so that works there. I am going to kick off a full run of the dialog unit tests just to make sure that all of these, because this shouldn't take a full recompile since none of the assemblies have changed, just to make sure that we haven't broken any of the additional dialog unit tests, and then we will get this pull request merged in. And one more regression done. So I do apologize if this bug has bitten anybody in your production applications, because I do know that it was a regression with 261. Great, and apply default styles doesn't appear to have broken any of the other tests. Excellent. I was kind of hoping it wouldn't. So let's just go back here real quick and we will check out our changes and make sure that all of these make sense. So let's see, I know we cleaned up the dialog closing event args with both white space changes and switching to null propagation, which is great. Looks fine. A couple spelling fixes in the comments. Let's see, pattern matching there. The pull request change doesn't show up because this is just our changes on top of the pull request. And then adding a unit test in specifically for the bug. So we'll put that in. Adding unit test for bug. Small cleanup of dialog host and dialog closing event args. Great. Stage all changes. Commit those changes, and then we'll push these back out to the same branch. And this one should show up here momentarily. So push successful, and the CI system kicks off. So while that is running, we'll refresh just to make it pick up. I'm going to go grab a Mountain Dew, and we will be back here in just a couple moments. Okay, I am back. More importantly, I have my Mountain Dew. Much better on my voice. Okay, so we'll let the CI system here roll, but we should be able to pop this guy open and see DevOps doing its thing. It's probably just going to take it a minute to chug through because it has to clone everything, pull down the SDKs for .NET Core, do all the NuGet restores, yada, yada, yada. Okay, so let's go back to our pull requests and let's take a look at what else is in this 3.0 milestone. Because again, I do want to try and get as many of these guys merged in as we can. Let's see. This one is going to take a little more time. Fixed list box assist, toggling for disabling items. Let's take a look at this one. That's probably a good one to look at next. So 1262. So I just want to double check this. I do try to make sure that the pull requests and issues, if one goes into a milestone, the other one goes in as well, which it is great. So if anyone ever finds a mistake in one of those, please let me know. I'm always happy to do this. Let's see here. So this is literally just turning this off. Great. Great, 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 great. I'm going to just let you chug for a little bit. I'm not interested in watching. Let's switch over and take a look at this one, 1312. This might be another good one to go and tack in a unit test for. Let's see, 1312. Yes. And just the fact that it shows patch 1 makes me suspect that it was done in the GitHub browser, which is not a problem by any means. Especially since the CI system ran it and said everything was fine. Oh, much better. Okay. There's that. So let's see here. What exactly? List box, mouse button, event arg. So this gets wired up. List box assist. Event manager. Yada, yada, yada. Set is toggle. So this guy is ultimately what triggers this. So it's watching for mouse events, checking that if toggle is true, then it falls through and does some work, figures out everything, yada, yada, yada. If it doesn't find the list box or the list box item is not enabled, it bails early. Okay. I think we could probably do some fancy null propagation. Yeah, null propagation. I think I said null prop earlier when it should have been null coalescing, but seems simple enough. This one might actually be a little bit more problematic to unit test given the setup here. So it needs to be fully reloaded. Reload all. Go ahead and reload. I know I just changed your universe Resharper and you're probably a little confused. There is a bit of an issue for anybody doing work. Pull requests that were created on a commit before the .NET Core stuff really throw tools like Resharper and Visual Studio for a loop when you switch back and forth, because it's changing not just the target frameworks, but the underlying CS proj files are switching from the old format to the new format and vice versa, depending on which direction you're changing branches on. And so switching to some of these old branches gets these tools very, very confused, and they basically just throw up their hands and say, I give up, I'm reloading the world, which is fine. It does also get confusing with things like Packet, where it has to do dependency restoring, and so it gets really, really, really confused. done yet? Look at that, success. Great. Let's get this guy merged in. Let's see. I thought this had, so we're going to need to close the corresponding issue. Let's see, comment, squash and merge, squash merge. That guy's in, and now this guy should be resolved. And I don't think, if you, when you're opening issues like this too, by the way, if you type in, and I don't require all, I don't remember all of the commands, but if you type in fixes, colon, and then the issue number, or bug in the issue number, when the pull request gets resolved, GitHub automatically closes the corresponding issue. Not a big deal, but it does save me one step from having to come over here and then close issue. So PR merged, issue closed. Don't know if it really needs more of an explanation. There's already a nice issue link there for it. And that guy is in and done. Great. Just test this real quick and make sure that this guy works as expected. And let's see here, close, close, and should be able to just launch and verify that this ultimately works. So as long as this guy goes through, we'll merge this pull request in. I'm a little less keen on trying to write a unit test for this, only because this is going to require hit testing, which in addition to just having the UI elements also requires effectively layout passes so that the hit testing can work. And so this line here I know will be, it'll make unit testing down to here difficult, because more than likely we are going to run into this case here. So I don't know a great way of dealing with this. This also is specifically pulling the mouse button event args, get position, and so it's going to try and look up the current mouse position, so this unit test could then fail based upon the fact that just my mouse won't be over an invisible element. So a little less concerned about unit testing this, and again, I don't expect great unit test coverage in this library, because most of this library is code like this that is notoriously difficult to test. There are ways around it with different libraries that allow for mocking statics and that kind of thing, but ultimately I'm a little less concerned with doing those, because a lot of these bugs are usually fairly simple and just one-offs. Yeah, we might run into issues doing this. If this guy doesn't launch and build just fine for me, I may just auto merge this and then we can test it on the CI builds. Yeah. Switching back and forth is very problematic. We might just throw in the towel on this, because looking at this change, there's nothing here that causes the failure, and I know that the CI system was able to build it. So a little less concerned with actually checking it locally. So we're just going to take this and merge it, because it is a simple one-liner fix that should take care of everything. And then once again, we're going to just verify this issue gets closed out as well. And for anybody looking to pick up these fixes, the CI system runs nightly. So in about 3-ish hours, it'll kick off and have a build out to NuGet, which means somewhere between 3 to 4 hours from now there will be preview NuGet packages released with all of these changes in it. Let's see here. So let's see here, and fixed by 1312. I don't, just to make sure that it's clear why this is getting closed. Great, great, great. And I'm just going to refresh this page real quick and keep going. Look at that, 29 closed already, 18 open. The closed count is a little misleading because it has both issues and pull requests, and so each one of these that I'm merging, I'm usually closing 2 at a time. Using a card with a progress bar. Need to look at these, need to look at those. I don't recall these. Floating action pop-up, multi-monitor system, fix pack icon. This one is interesting. Let's take a look at this one. And I might just close down Visual Studio for a minute because I think what's about to happen is with all of these pull requests, I'm probably going to just have to clean my local state and then rebuild. Fix for multi-line. Oh yes, 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 yes. I recall this one. So let's take a quick look here. So this is in the demo app. Checkbox column, white space cleanup, great. Adds an is editable flag to the column object itself. Great. Let's see here. Generate editing one, combo box is editable. So this is basically just a flag on the column itself to give you control over the editable property on the combo box. And what is this here? Material design theme. Hold on. Fix multi-line text box height. This looks like it's a combination. I think I know what happened. I bet you I know what happened. So when you're creating pull requests, ideally the first step is to create a branch off of the master branch. Do your work there and pull request that in. Then if you want to fix a different issue, do a new branch off of master again rather than off of your current state. Otherwise you end up with extra stuff in here. So I think what happened is I believe there's an is editable one here because this is is that not on here? Did I not include? Let me check all the pull requests. I could have sworn that there's a second one in here for add is editable. Yeah, so this is what I'm. Yeah, so I'm thinking what happened is both of these changes were done on the same branch, which unfortunately makes them a little challenging to separate. Because .12.6.5, 12.8.4. Let's see, this is off of data grid. This is off of master. So I think one of these probably they both appear to have the same changes in them. Love to separate these. Let's see. I think we can separate these because, well, before I get too carried away, let's first take a little bit closer look at it. So we've got these two pull requests here. The thing that I'm noticing is this one for the text box height was done off the master branch. This one here is done off the data grid branch. Because both of these are forks of this library, and by default GitHub leaves the checkbox enabled for allowing me push access when people create pull requests, I think we can just reset these branches and get them back in the correct state. So I think what I do, let's check this one out first, 1399. Wait, 1399. 1339. That's a little bit different. Okay, so yes, and I think we want to look, because I'm curious on this particular remote, meaning his fork of the repository, if his master branch and data grid branch labels are pointed at the same commit hash. Given that the pull requests look identical, I suspect that they are, but I don't know that for a fact yet. So, but we're going to look. So remotes, see, we are here. Show me where the master branch is. Master branch is there. Okay, where's data grid? Interesting. So get, I'm confused then why the other one shows. So this added the packet file, this deleted the packet file. So these two commits cancel each other out. This one adds text box style, which is fine because that's what I would expect. But then that begs the question, why the heck does this guy show? I would expect only that commit to be in here. Why does this show an alternate change? Why do you show? Let's take a look. Because the pull request from this branch, I guess part of the issue is I've got too many other, start hiding some of these remotes. Because I'm really only interested in taking a look at, see, turn off some of these remotes and don't really want to look at most of these branches. So I'm really only interested in seeing the comparison between data grid, master, okay, so given that, and I'm going to just start hiding a bunch of these branches because don't really want to look at most of them. Should really go through and clean up all my local branches at some point. Haven't gotten that far. Okay, so that gets me a lot tighter. So here's this master branch. Here's my master branch. There's the data grid one. Why is this pull request showing me more than just... I understand why the text box one off of master is showing me more, or is including this. But I don't understand why the merge from here is showing me more than just that. So let's take a look. Because this is the data grid. And it's got the textbox.xaml included as part of this. Am I blind or crazy? Where? Because this green line is main master all the way up. Why do you show extra changes? Because this fixes merge conflicts. Great. I'm really confused why it's showing me more than just this. Well, regardless, let's go through and see. Let's pull down master, and then let's rebase data grids onto master. I believe a simple rebase here should bring this up to speed. View conflicts. What's the conflict here? So I'm pretty sure what I want to do is take everything I'm master in this file. Save. I'm just doing this rebase to check it real quick, to verify that this really is what I want this to look like. I think the answer is yes. Come on, save. Skip commit. Great. So this should just have this one change. So a single commit, it brings in is editable, adds it to the combo box, which is exactly as we would expect. Great. Okay. That's too much stuff. Too much stuff. Get cracking. And I believe this is exactly what we want. So, push the changes. Let's see. Not going to break anything. Just going to move the data grid pointer up to here. Force push. Force push. It is always, always good to double check before you do a force push. Otherwise, it's very easy to break stuff. So, but this should, yeah, so GitHub notices that the world's changed out from under it, but now the pull request just shows the data grid changes, which is what we want. Perfect. Let's fire this guy up here, I think. And this one I think I would like to test real quick. This guy here, I think we can fix as well. We'll see. We shall see. I'm more interested in just merging in the data grids one, and then this guy, any of the previous changes that were in here, because he technically has this commit as part of his Git history. So as long as this merges in just fine, Git is smart enough to notice that those changes are identical, and it'll just work. So assuming I can just take those things wholesale, and this works as designed, it should be a pretty easy merge, and we'll just merge both of these in. So this guy was in here. This guy I don't think was in the 3.0 milestone. No, he was. Look at that. Okay, great. We'll knock off a bunch of things. One commit. Whole bunch of items in there. Okay, so this guy should be good. Just run it. See what happens. I think this is still in a good state because I think it failed to compile when we reverted back to the old .NET Framework stuff. So I assume just simply relaunching Visual Studio's probably put it back into a good state. So with that in mind, hopefully this works. Real quick, let's just double check. So the change here is on the data grids. So the one for the food header, the food should have is editable true. I'm wondering if the default for this is correct. If instead of defaulting to false, it should default to true. I don't know. I think the default WPF one defaults editable to true. So I'm wondering if the default of this should be different. I think we'll double check that and make sure, because I want to, I try to make this library, though it adheres to the material design specification, or at least mostly does. I try to make it as easy as possible for people bringing over and porting their existing apps. It's always frustrating when you bring in a library and suddenly the default behavior of a bunch of your controls has changed, because theming libraries do get a lot of control, especially with the templates, to change the default behavior of controls, which is really frustrating. So I think in the interest of portability, we'll double check what the WPF behavior is, and we'll mimic that. I think is probably the easiest way to do it. Go from there, which probably just means commenting out the one line where it sets the isEditable flag to see what the default is. And going from there. Because I think if we do that, that'll at least be feature parity for anybody coming from an old version or from default. It's probably good enough. So that'll probably be the vast majority of the users. If I make any assumptions, by the way, that don't align with your particular use cases, please shoot me a message. Either comment on one of these issues on GitHub or in the Gitter chat room and let me know. Because a lot of times I base my user base assumptions on what questions I see in the chat room and what issues I see opened. And I realize there's a large number of users that tend to be quiet and not necessarily interact much, and so it makes it a little more difficult on me to try to understand those use cases. So if there is a bad assumption that I'm making, if you could just let me know what your use case is and how you would like to see things work, I do try to take that stuff into consideration, especially on things like this where it's trying to find the best default, because the best default behavior for one person doesn't necessarily line up with everyone else. And I hate picking defaults based on what a small minority of people might think, so the more input I get, the better. Come on, compile. Let's get this guy going. We will see where this is going. Again, if people have any questions or things that they'd like to see, do let me know, because I would like to tailor these. I really do enjoy going through and building out example repos and teaching people how to do stuff. So if there's something people want to see, I am happy to do it. Come on, Visual Studio. You can do it. You can do it. I know compiling's hard sometimes. I did want to go through and check this file here. So material design data grid combo box column. Just to make sure that we interesting. Material data grid combo box column. I'm wondering if the material prefix is actually adding much to this name. Just knowing that this 3.0 release is a chance to make breaking changes, because you're to use the column class in your own app, you're going to have to prefix it with a namespace. I'm wondering if this is just duplicating what the namespace is effectively doing, which would be interesting. Might consider doing a rename on this. Again, definitely another breaking change, but it's one that I don't mind. I definitely don't mind doing for a 3.0 release. So I'm going to add that to the list. For reference, if people would like to go through on this issue, let's see here. Just grab this 1303. Numlock, try again, 1303. If people want to go through and submit pull requests for any, not that one. I gotta go find the right issue number. If people want to go through and submit pull requests for any of these breaking changes, I'm perfectly happy to take those. I may not take them right away. I may delay some of them a little bit until 1301. I may delay them until right before the release comes through. But each of these individual items could be their own pull request, especially if you're looking for an easy thing to do. Let's see. Rename material design combo box column to data grid combo box column. Boom. Since using the custom column, an app will require specifying the namespace, having the material prefix adds very little. So the only confusing part by doing this rename will be within the library, and I'm okay with the confusion living inside the library if it makes your guys' job a little bit easier. So add that. Okay. Come on, Visual Studio. I know you finished. What are you doing? What are you doing besides testing my patience? Output. Great. Did you build? Are you launching? I'm confused. Come on. Come on. You can do it. I know it's hard. 3 failed. Of course you did. Oh. Okay. So let's go here. Sometimes changing branches is a bigger pain than it needs to be. Hey, nope, go back please. Open PowerShell window here. So occasionally you do run into this problem. If you hit this while working with the library, hopefully it's been a little bit more fixed with the latest branches. So first I would say just make sure that your branch is updated. Packet restore. Okay, so that should be fixed. Let's see. The fact that that's saying it's not is a little disconcerting, but let's give this another shot. That should have pulled it down. There is something worth knowing. The show me the Xaml library. One, you probably don't need it in your own applications unless you're trying to show Xaml in like an XML text box for somebody to copy and paste out of. It's really designed to be a developer targeted feature. So unless your app is targeting developers, it's probably not that useful to you. But it brings in a library that's loaded as part of the MS Build pipeline. And because we're using Packet to restore our dependencies, Packet also runs as part of the MS build pipeline. The problem being is on initial clones or when you've changed branches, Packet needs to restore its dependencies and make sure that all of those files are there before MS build runs. And so because it's already inside of the pipeline, by the time that restore happens, initial builds can fail a lot. Or in this case, more than a lot. Confirm the declaration exists. Why do you think this doesn't exist? Why do you think this doesn't exist? Because this file definitely should be there. Okay, the whole folder doesn't exist. Let's go check out, what does my packages directory look like? There is no packages directory. Well, that would definitely do it now, wouldn't it? Let's see here. So, what is going on? I feel like this is probably a clean and rebuild situation. Let's just, let's see, get clean dfx, get ourselves back into a better state. There's a lot of intermediate libraries that get both built and lost when doing this, because there are effectively two types of compiles that are all happening here, and it could also be related to MS build processes being kept open. For performance, MS build doesn't restart its process every time on a Visual Studio compile. Instead, it leaves one process running and or potentially multiple processes running and reuses them. The problem being that the clean failed. Interesting. The problem with that being that if those MS build processes have references to DLLs and file handles open to them, you then start to run into problems. The easiest option is just to close and relaunch Visual Studio. You can also do something like task kill inside of Task Manager or command line to force them down and relaunch them. Personally, I think that restarting Visual Studio is the shorter path because the launch time in Visual Studio has gotten so much better. So, what did you fail on? Hoping you failed because I was running the get clean dfx simultaneously. So we're gonna make the assumption that that was the problem, and then we're just gonna do the packet restore real quick. Okay. I think we're just going to kill and relaunch Visual Studio just to make sure we're back in that clean state, because we rebased this guy on top of master, so there's no reason he should be failing for any unknown or weird reason. He should just work. Should, or the old developer adage, it works on my box, because that's common, or at least happens more often than I would like to admit. Come on. Come on. Really tempted to turn you off right now, Resharper, just so I can get a little more stuff done, because you really are slowing me down right now. Since I don't necessarily need your features at the moment. Somewhat tempted to turn you off. Might end up turning you off, at least for the streaming, and then coming back. Okay, there you go. Down you go, and relaunch. Pull that, do that. Hopefully this gets up and running. I really just want to launch this and then test the defaults to see if we need to toggle that Boolean from false to true as a default. It's really all I'm looking to figure out, because having this guy, let's see, apply style. This is the same, it's just cleaning up the white space. Get editing element style. This is just a white space change, white space change. I'm also wondering too if I'm wondering if perhaps this should be part of apply style. Pick style is editing element style. I'm wondering if this is important, because if you can get access it via the editing element style, this may not be that valuable of a change. Generate element, editing element style. We should look at this. I mean, this is definitely a convenience method. I just would hate to ultimately end up having to expose a bunch of stuff for the combo box that doesn't need to be there. I'm a little bit torn. Little bit torn. Interesting. Okay. Let's launch this, and I'm somewhat tempted to go and see if this can be resolved in a different way. Default editing element style. This name here is clearly wrong. The brush key. This is definitely a resource key, but it's not to a brush because it's clearly pulling out a style. So we may end up renaming some of this stuff, but I don't see a reason to keep. Let's see, generate element, apply style, pick style. This is coming from the base class, not anything we're doing. I am very torn about keeping this. As I'm a little hesitant to just keep, there's a fine line between exposing convenience properties and just exposing the styles to do it. And if the style is there, I'm thinking that might be good enough. I mean, part of the issue is the data grid control is probably one of the most complex controls in all of WPF. It is incredibly powerful. You can do a lot with it, but because it's got so much power, it leaves a lot to be desired for the API and to have things be easy. And so if you aren't familiar with it, it can be a bit of a bear to wrestle with. Just to get things to look the way you want, to work the way you want. A lot of people want to approach it like Excel, and it's a little bit easier than that in some ways, and in other ways it's a little bit more complex. I do wonder. We'll test this out because I think we can get the same behavior without this. It's interesting that this item source binding is here. The other thing that's worth knowing is part of the issue is some of these bindings, and this one here makes a little more sense. The binding context for a column of a data grid is different than the binding context of a cell within a data grid. And this starts to lead to some of the confusion. The grids themselves are bound effectively at the same level that the data grid is. So they have access to the data grid's data context. Whereas the cell themselves is going to be typically bound to the individual item within the item's collection. So if you have a data grid with, say, 3 items, each item is its own row, the cell is going to be bound to that. Okay, so now we're cooking. So let's go over here, grids, and it was the foods column. I think it was. Let's just check real quick. So this is effectively the show me the Xaml and what it ends up doing. Material design, text column, combo box column is editable true. Okay. That's auto-generated and auto-generated. So this is the only one that's specifically setting them. And so it allows for, typing into the box as well. So if we jump over here through the magic of XAML edit and continue, I think, it might not work. Because even if it updates the column, and this is another weird thing about this property, is even if you edit this column here and it changes it on the column, it's going to do nothing for reloading the individual cells. Or maybe it will. Yeah, I can know. Wow. Go XAML edit and continue. Sweet. Okay. I am a bit torn. Okay, so let's do this. So we'll leave that guy there for the moment, and we'll turn this off, because I want to know what the default behavior this is. And I think we should be able to get similar behavior simply by editing the XAML. So I think what we can do, and we're gonna double check this to be sure. Let's see here. Material design. Material. Okay, I'm lazy. Copy and paste for the win. Editing. Element style. Style. Target type. Combo box. This is another reason why I'm somewhat tempted to keep this property in, because knowing how to do these styles is definitely more complex. Let's see here, and then we need to base it on something. So what was the... Come on, you can do it, Visual Studio. So this guy was based on... the default here, I guess. This guy. So we should be able to do based on static resource. And it's worth knowing that if you do a static resource like this and it doesn't show up, you may need to make sure that you include the appropriate resource dictionary at the top of your file, which I believe this one's already including it. So yeah, so this is the resource dictionary that you need to include, the one with all of the data grid styles in it. think. Huh. Where do you live? Let's go hunting real quick. I would have hoped that all of these styles live inside of the data grid one. Typically, for this library, styles for a particular control and all related styles live in this path, material design theme dot control name dot XAML. So if you're ever unsure of where to look, it should be that simple. Let's go and figure out where the heck this guy lives, because I would have expected him to be right inside of here. So it is O. Okay. Boy, this makes it even worse. So it is inside of here, but its key is not just a... So, and this is probably worth knowing. So the key for this guy is not just this string. It's actually a bit more complicated. It is a component resource key. Type in target assembly with that resource ID on top of it. So let's do, well, we're going to save it and launch here, because I think if we get this style in and working correctly, we can then use XAML edit and continue. I am curious what this combo box defaults to, editable or not, and then confirming that we can change it with this style. And seeing that ugly based on key makes me wonder if having that editable property is either a good idea, or if because expecting people to be able to do this to edit the combo box for something simple like is editable, it's kind of a pain. So I can understand the desire for wanting the is editable flag to live right on the column object itself. It's not something that we expect people to bind, because it's not a bindable property or a dependency property. So that really does beg the question, should it be? Should it be? I'm really not sure. I am really not sure on this one, because I completely understand, like I said, that this syntax here for doing all of this just so that you can toggle some properties on the combo box is a little bit ridiculous. It definitely doesn't feel easy or straightforward. I'm just trying to weigh that against how often does something like this need to be done. So defaults is non-editable. So if I want to go through and toggle it, so the default of false is correct at least. So we can agree on that. Let's see, so if we do, okay. Next time, Resharper, we're turning you off before we start streaming. You are costing me way too much time. Please wait for an editor command to finish. What editor command? I typed 3 keystrokes. Come on. Exceeded, yeah. I don't really want you doing anything. I just want you to let me type. are thinking way too much. Okay, let's just kill execution. I'm thinking the Xaml edit and continue is slowing this down and potentially even having this unit test window open. Oh, we got S. One whole S. Thank goodness. Yeah, I understand. You are slowing things down. Setter property is editable. Value true. Okay, so this should be the equivalent of having that property there. So then this comes to the question of what should be there, because that would mean that the column property would take precedence over the style. Not sure how I feel about that, because what's happening is this property's value is being set on the element directly, and property setters on the element directly take precedence over style setters. So that gives the combo box columns is editable property preference over this style setter. Which means if we allow this on here, it's always setting this. I'm wondering if it should be at least made nullable or similar. That way it doesn't always have to win unless it's explicitly set. That might be a reasonable compromise. If we made that a nullable property, then we would know the difference between set and unset. So I can type in there and it works. So that's the equivalent and the alternative to adding this guy. Really torn, really torn on what is the appropriate behavior here. Especially since applying this is going to element style, element editing. I think we leave the property in, but I think we do this. So I think we leave it nullable, and we only set it if it's not null. So if is editable is bool is editable, right? So only if we actually have, only if somebody actually sets this property will we ever actually go through and do the setter. I think this is a better compromise. Because I do think that, what are you squawking about? Cut. What is going on? Visual Studio, you are confusing me, and I do not like it. Just move this text right there. That's all I want. Thanks. And then, yeah, nope, not what I asked for. Then move you like that. Like that. So we'll only ever set this in the case where the user's actually provided a value. I think we go back here, change this back to true. I think what I'm going to do is leave this in as an example for people, because I know a lot of people end up looking at this demo app as for ways of doing things. Setting the editing element style allows access to all of the combo boxes properties. We're just going to leave this in so that if people want to see more, this is effectively the way to do it. If you apply to each combo, yeah, that should be good. Okay, so that gets us there, that gets us there. Great, great, great. Okay, I think we're good accepting this now. So let's go back here because we've got a couple changes that we made, at least in terms of demo. So review the changes, and let's see here. So added the example to the demo app. Great. We're going to leave this guy as default of true so that it can show off how things work. Let's see, material design combo box column. What do we change here? So we made this editable is nullable, and we're only going to set it if we actually get a true or false set into there. Otherwise, we're going to fall back and let the style handle it, which that will let the style effectively default it to false. So changed editable to be nullable. This allows the combo box style to override the column setting when the property is not explicitly set. Great. Something like that. Stage all changes. And commit changes. And we'll push this guy up. And as soon as the CI system finishes, we will complete it. And that will give, I'll bring in our last one, I think. This will be the next one to go through and deal with. I think this is probably going to also end up being a bit of a rebase because I'm going to want to drop off and really only pick up the single commit because we don't need all of these things in here. So I think we'll just get those ones cleaned up and that brought in. But for now, let's see, refresh. This guy has that. Is editable true? Great. Great, 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 great. So this should have 2 commits in here. Original one, our updates from tonight. And then as soon as the CI system finishes, like I said, we will go ahead and get that merged in, and we'll be one step close to closing out all of this 3.0 stuff. I think with that, it's getting late, and I have to be up early tomorrow, so I am probably going to call it there. If people have strong preferences as far as what you want to see in, or if there's major issues or features that you were hoping to get into 3.0, please let me know. Like I said, a comment on the video, either here or YouTube, or a message in the Gitter chat room are the easiest ways to get a hold of me. So let me know. Like I said, I'm happy to prioritize people. For now, everything in the milestone is my current priority. No promises that it all makes it in because, again, the milestone is only my commitment to look at it, not my commitment to ship it. So until it's closed, it's not guaranteed. And then also trying to balance that with hoping to get the 3.0 release of this library out the door at the same time or close to the same time the .NET Core 3 releases, so that people can have a stable NuGet package for that. And again, with that, MAAP support may be coming a little later not necessarily included at the same time. So with that, I'm going to sign off for the night. Hopefully poke away at more of these pull requests. Again, I do thank everyone for jumping in, answering questions, submitting pull requests, issues, and testing while I was gone. It was really great to see all the contributions from people. So with that, have a good night. Happy coding.